is a story that spans almost 4,000 years. A story of the oldest document of Western civilization, with a message that is timeless and mysterious. The Egyptian Book of the Dead is the ancient Egyptians' guide to the afterlife, and it may well be the world's first religious document. From the controversial archaeologist who plots to smuggle it out of Egypt,
I will not tolerate any deviation from the law, either by you or by your native friends,
to a terrifying journey into the afterlife itself. The Egyptian Book of the Dead is a story as old as civilization. The first vision of Judgment Day. A book that may answer the ultimate questions that humanity has asked for millennia. Mummies. They are the mysterious remnants of one of history's oldest civilizations. They hint at vast expanses of time and of secrets wrapped deep within their ancient shrouds. They are so familiar, yet so alien. A frightening reminder of our own mortality, yet a tantalizing promise of immortality. The mummy is only the remnant of a far greater mystery, the tip of the iceberg. The ancient Egyptians believed in a vast and intricate afterlife. Each mummified corpse is expected to resurrect in another world, and there is only one guide to that world, the Egyptian Book of the Dead. It is the name given to scrolls entombed with the mummified dead in ancient Egypt.
The Book of the Dead was a kind of guidebook for the deceased, and a book of spells and to aid the deceased in his journey through the afterlife and the process of becoming immortal.
It was certainly a book of magic. It's a collection of spells, the chief purpose of which is to enable life after death and immortality to the deceased.
It is a book for the dead because it tells us about what the dead will face in the afterlife. That's why we call it the Book of the Dead. It is very important because this is a quest of immortality.
Some have said the ancient Egyptians cared more about their life after death than their life on Earth. This must have been the case for those who lived in the ancient city of Thebes in the 19th dynasty over 3,000 years ago. This is the story of one Egyptian whom history only records as Ani. Ani lived during a high point of Egyptian culture, known as the New Kingdom. From the year 1600 BCE to 1200 BCE, brilliant military pharaohs conquer lands from Nubia to Syria. Pharaohs like Ramses and Seti built enormous palaces and lavish religious temples. Ani enjoys one of the highest standards of living in ancient Egyptian history. It is perhaps only in these historic periods of relative prosperity that a civilization begins to contemplate questions of philosophy, life, and the afterlife. It is clear from the historical record that the afterlife must have weighed heavily on Ani's mind. The idea of dying without proper preparation for the next world could jeopardize one's chances for eternal paradise.
Iwas nuha. Nana herit eteri mosig nachnuch.
The evidence of Ani's obsession with the afterlife is this extraordinary piece of funeral art known as the Scroll of Ani.
The Scroll of Ani is rightly one of the most famous copies of the Book of the Dead because of the high quality of the artistry. The writing, and especially the beautifully painted vignettes, are really among the most impressive of any of the Books of the Dead that have survived.
Archaeologists have uncovered more than 25,000 copies of the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the oldest text dating from 1500 BCE, the latest dating from the 4th century AD. But it is here at the famed British Museum in the heart of 21st century London that one can see the famous Scroll of Ani, the finest example of the Egyptian Book of the Dead ever preserved. Painted approximately in the year 1250 BCE, it contains 65 prayers and magical spells, and over 150 colorful illustrations. This exquisite piece of work is one of the longest scrolls ever discovered. When unrolled, it measures an incredible 78 feet. But the way in which the museum acquired this masterpiece is filled with intrigue and controversy. The scroll was brought from Egypt in 1887 by a museum employee named Ernest Alfred Thompson Wallace Budge. He was a prolific author, writing over 100 books on Egyptology, most of which are still in print. He published some of the first translations of important Egyptian texts. He collected thousands of artifacts that have been acknowledged as some of the finest examples of ancient art. Yet there are those who say Budge was a second-rate scholar, a poor archaeologist, and a cultural thief, acquiring antiquities by any means possible.
He was out there, well, basically looting and pillaging and buying up what he could.
People apply cultural judgments which are totally out of time. The fact that he took materials out of ancient cultures for its day was quite normal.
You can't look at him from a modern point of view. You know, he's a cultural thief. This is not the way they looked at it in those days. But on the other hand, he did sail very close to the wind.
I think he was a thief. Because, you can be an honest man all your life, but if you steal something, you become a thief.
Though Budge is controversial today, in his lifetime, he is a respected translator and one of the finest curators of the British Museum. In the fall of 1887, they sent him to Egypt to collect artifacts. Budge's trip to Egypt is timed perfectly. Shortly after his arrival, news of newly discovered artifacts begin to surface, which he notes in his autobiography.
Before I'd been in Cairo many hours, I found that everyone was talking about the discoveries made in Upper Egypt, and the most extraordinary stories were afloat. Rumors of the finds had reached all the great cities of Europe, and there were representatives of several continental museums in Cairo, each doing his best to secure the lion's share.